like a very low number of like effect, like just, you know, it just felt like a lot of gear grinding. Yesterday was great. I was back in my preschool that I love. But then today was a PD day. So I'm back down there today. I usually work 3 days. So it just has felt like, and the PD day, as they can be, was actually great. AmazeWorks, local organization, equity training, like great anti-racist stuff. I had been curious about their content. I hadn't had the opportunity to be in one of their sessions. So I was delighted to experience that. But, you know, it's another day that's not mine. And I intentionally schedule my life to have a couple days that are mine, which is a privilege, which I own. But I'm just feeling a little flat today. Thank you for asking.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Yes, we can all relate. Naomi, hiya. We can't hear you. Uh-oh. Oh, there she is. Naomi. Oh. Okay. Will do. Got it. Okay. Well, we'll come back to Naomi. Ellen Hafner, come on down.
I've got nothing. Like, I had a good week. Next week's our last week. I have nothing to say. Let's focus on these people who have other things going on.
All right. Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, all. Easing toward the end, we've got 2 more weeks. And if anyone, I have just a question to the group, if we're allowed to do that. I have a grandparents class that I just love because they have so much wisdom and they come with their grandchildren. But I was just curious, like the things that they wanted to most know was how to navigate parenting their adult children with also parenting their early childhood, grandchildren, that some of them take care of them 5 days a week. Some are just 1 day a week or whatever. I was just curious if anyone has any, and I've just been doing a lot of social emotional learning lessons and temperament, sort of the usual things you would do with any class, but doing it from the perspective, it's so many multi-layered, right? But like the temperament was great because then they were thinking about their own children as well as their little grandchildren. And but just curious if anyone has ideas for, we only have 2 classes left, and I'm going to spend the last class something related to gratitudes and connection, but so only 1 more topic class, and was thinking about ways to get them talking about this challenge of how to support their adult children as parents, but yet they have a lot of wisdom as parents, right? But yet they parented at a different time. Yeah, it's just curious if anyone's done that.
Interesting. Okay. I have added that to the list, to the chat list. So we have 2 items now we'll come back to. I just want to do a quick check-in with everyone. And Abby, are you with us, or are you just listening, or?
I am here. I'm on the phone, but this is my first week back from maternity leave. So just getting into the swing of things, and I've subbed 2 out of the 5 days. So that's been a little irritating, if I'm being honest. But we just have no staff in our preschool rooms, and there's a lot of like respiratory stuff going on. So just trying to like plan my own things and getting back into the groove while still subbing. So, but other than that, it's been good to be back and see all my families and a couple new families, and our classes are going really well. So it's been fun to be back.
Wonderful. Great. And it's so wonderful to have you back in the group. And this was your second child?
Third boy.
Woo!
Yeah, so Yeah, but he's a very good baby, and his temperament is super calm, unlike my other two. So hopefully it stays that way.
Somebody's looking out for you.
I hope so.
Great. So let's see. I think we connected with everyone. Yeah. Well, Greta, let's go back to your question. Okay. And your question was about assessment, right? And about, do you do assessments every day with parents? So.
Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate the head nod or the shake.
That feels too much like school to me.
Doesn't it though? I know.
And it also doesn't allow for your classes to go where they should go. I've really, really let go of like, today we're talking about this. And like, okay, generally you guys, here's what I want to talk about this fall. But sometimes I have one group, we have not been on task for 4 weeks and we have had the best conversations. And if I were to come in and be like, today, how would you rate your child's temperament or your knowledge of temperament? And then a post test, like, I did a mid-session check-in for the first time. I've been talking about doing a mid-session check-in where I was just like, hey, how's it going? Anything to share? Because if you wait until 10 weeks at the end, you're like, oh my gosh, that mom was like, and we got really great feedback. So I really enjoy doing that mid-session feedback and I'm going to do it every time. Yeah, I feel like that's good enough.
I know. She was so excited. She came with these tools. Like, what I know, what I wonder, and what I've learned, kind of doing that sort of a tool. And she was so excited and they're so darn cute. They do graphics and that makes it look so fun. And I'm like,
I think you could definitely do that for an information heavy topic. Like,
there you go.
What do you know? What do you think about discipline? What do you know? What would you want to know? And that would be a really fun way to like gauge, like, what have you heard? That would be a good one about kindergarten readiness. Like, what do you think kindergarten readiness is? What are you wondering about? So I think it would work really well for certain topics, but not every week.
So can I ask, just that we clarify assessment, right? Because in my brain, of course, it can mean anything, and a check-in can be an assessment, right? So, but for the viewing audience at home, when you ask about assessment, Greta, and what do you mean?
I mean, would we be able to qualify or quantify learning happening during the session that we just had? That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of ways I know that we can get to that. And some, like Ellen was just saying, some are very information heavy sessions. Some are more guided by the immediate needs of the group. And I'm with Ellen. I mean, man, 80% of the time we get to the topic I prepared this fall. I don't know what it is, but there's a real need for processing and dialoguing and processing and dialoguing. And you can't get there. But I understand for someone coming into the field that it's really, I remember it was scary to go that direction, because where are you going to end up, and will I be ready for a response or a redirect, right? If the topic goes a certain way or something. But yeah, so my question is what is validating for our profession? So we have good data, and also self-assessment that comes from self-assessment from the parents, as well as my assessments, I guess. And like you said, Susan, it happens in a variety of ways. And I feel like I just do it so quick and I don't realize that I'm doing it, and I need to validate that process.
Right. So my, this is.
Oh yeah, go for it.
This is a hot button topic for me, because it then, and because I have done a lot of evaluations for parenting education programs and have been contracted by people who want an evaluation done of their program who have absolutely no idea why. They just know they have to, right? So when I ask about assessment and your response is, you know, in that session, are they learning? Now we go back to, then we go to, what do you mean by learning? Right? And then we come back to, what is the purpose of all of this? Because in a grand scheme, if we think about people's learning, to learn in every session is incredibly inefficient, right? Because we know that the process, I'm sorry, am I lecturing?
No, go. I don't know, thumbs up. I mean, you guys vote. I mean, are you or do we want her to stop?
This is just the way that it goes, right? And so I always come down to practicalities, right? The practicality of what's the reason, what is the purpose of this? And if it's engagement, are my group of folks, right? Are they engaged in learning in this time? That kind of assessment, that's dynamite, right? That's really important. That is all part of learning. But as soon as somebody says quantify, right? Or data, right? Then your data is going to be it's going to be crappy if you do it every single time, unless you're doing a case study of an individual and you are marking their, you know, like, and all of that. But with sort of the big view of ECF, so then are you talking about an individual, or are you talking about a class? Are you talking about a program, right? And so even as a class, anyway, sorry, I could go on for like 13 weeks on this stuff. So again, I'm going to summarize this just by saying, what's the point, right? I mean, coming down to, and who does it serve? Is it serving the individual parent? Is it serving the educator? Is it serving your program, right? And those are all different needs, right? But because we're a collective of professionals here as educators, then I'm going to go to this pile over here is serving your needs, Greta, as an instructor, right? Which I think is the heart of your question when you ask the group, do you assess every day, right? Every time. Yeah. And now I'm going to default to Ellen's response of no, it's not efficient. You're doing your own assessment though, because you're a skilled professional. Of are people engaged? Are they together? Are they flat today? Are they engaged today?
Don't forget too, when they come back the next week and they're like, last week's class was so awesome because I went and did this assessment done, you know?
That's good.
I had a conversation, a class a few weeks ago, 3 dads and me. The discussion was about raising children anti-racist and anti-sexist. One dad launched in at the very beginning and talked about how awful it was that we spent so much time talking about this, because that's the problem with what we're doing, is we're talking too much about it. And he felt very strongly. He wasn't yelling, but he felt very strongly. And the other 2 dads then spoke kind of where they are on those things, respectfully, as he had, even though strong feelings. And I spoke with strong feelings, although respectfully. And when I walked away, I thought, you know, everyone was engaged, everyone was listening carefully, and everyone had respect for each other and listened. And I call that a win. It's not that we have to agree on everything all the time.
I'm just going to chime in and say that I think I know that in Minneapolis, they do what you're talking about, Greta, which is the beginning of each class, they have goals for parents. And at the end of each class, parents are asked, did we meet the goals? And I am with the whole sentiment of like, that's way too rigid. Whose need does that meet? But I do think there's like a big district that is that's standard of practice. So
So just
I also feel like it's a little
go ahead.
insulting might not be the right word, but it's like, okay, parents, what do you know now and what do you know later? Like, we know they're coming with knowledge, right? And to assume, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of just an underlying, here's what you don't know, and now here's what you do know. I don't know. Like, it just feels a little too prescribed to me. You're right.
Yeah. One of the tools that she brought 2 tools to me this week and said, what do you think? Here's the 2. And the one was the 3 processes of what you know, what you're wondering about, and what you feel you learned. The other one was novice, growth, all the way up to expert. And I'm like, oh, instead of not doing that one. That just threw me. I'm like, no way. I'm not doing, are you now an expert, or where would you put yourself on this? I was like, I'm sorry, we can't do that in parent ed. Anyway.
And so many parents are in different places.
Yes. And and am I going to sit and qualify all those levels? No.
There's also a cultural lens too. Like, that's very westernized to like grade yourself. So it's also problematic when we layer that on top of learning, I think, for adults, especially.
Well said, Sarah. I totally agree with you.
And also, as adult students, they get to choose. It's not adult education if you're not giving them a choice in what they participate in learning. And if you decide ahead of time, these parents need these 8 things this session, it's not adult education. It's something else.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
And Greta, what you're talking, that first tool really sounds more like a self-reflection, right? I mean, which is, and in adult learning theory, that kind of reflective practice is very important for understanding your own growth and direction, right? Like, how well do I understand, because it is adult learning and it's not credit-based kind of formal stuff. And so that reflection on how much did I understand here, right? What other kind of questions might I have? I mean, that's fine, but I don't know that that's the same kind of assessment that Sarah's talking about with Minneapolis in terms of sort of growth towards goals. That is a very quantitative kind of measurement thing. Yeah.
It's my impression, I've not witnessed it, but I've heard it described, and it's my impression that it's very much like, here are my goals. I will read you these slides and you will tell me if what I read to you helped you learn those things.
Okay.
I love the retrospective pretest. Remember that too? I'm sure you do, Susan. Learning about that in my degree program. I think it's such a really cool way of helping people think about where they've been and what they've learned and what they've gained and what they're glad to have been there for.
Yeah, and being able to do that from a quantity. I mean, the thing I like about that is you can use it for a self-assessment, right? But because we could also, because it was on a Likert scale, we could also do that quantitative thing. And with enough data, we could look at statistical differences, and what was most fascinating to me is it just validates that people know their own learning, right? They know their own growth, because one of the things, and I won't get geeky about this, but one of the things that was really cool to see was out of like 13 parenting items, the parent growth was very discriminative. It wasn't like they wanted to please the teacher. So they said, oh, when I came into this class, I knew nothing. And now that I've been in this class, I'm over here. Like, I'm a 1, now I'm a 5, right? They didn't. It was just like on a lot of stuff when they came in about, I think there was like an emotional thing with kids and reading or whatever, like they were good. Like I came in, I was already pretty strong on that. I didn't really grow a whole lot. But when it came on things like on temperament, parents love that topic because that's like a new thing to them. So we could also document that there were particular areas of growth that were that we could validate them and see, it's not all of them, but in these areas, this is where parents are really impacting. But again, and you could do it that way, and we could use it statistically, but you can also use it, as Sarah's saying, right? Just as your own kind of reflection on, where was I when I came in here? And it's also, yeah, I mean, there are other ways of doing it, but yeah, thanks.
Well, when you say it, Susan, it reminds me that I did tell the student teacher, I was like talking with her about, why don't we use those, by the way, Sarah Hardy, I am using those little books. I bought those little books and I have them under their name tags, and they come in and they take their little books. We call them our little books, little book of ideas, and they can write down whatever they want. We stop at times and we use them. We say, open up your little book of ideas, write down the first 5 snacks that you can think of that your kids love to have, and they write down their snacks. And then I am so excited because those are what I'm going to go back to at the end of the semester here. Well, we're more mid-semester. We're just finishing mid-semester. We're go through January, but that's what I'm hoping to use as my tool for them to self-assess. And I was thinking that this tool that she brought up about what I think I know about this topic already, what I wonder about it and what I want to learn or what I did learn, we could use those in those books. Really easy. Just quickly write down something what comes to your mind and use it that way. It would be beautiful, I think, because they could look back and yeah. And Sarah, thank you.
Oh, Greta, thank you. That's an awesome idea. And I've just let them open those books if the mood strikes, but I love the idea of actually directing them to use them in that way and catalog some of their thoughts and learning. I love that. Thank you. That's awesome.
Well, thank you for your time. If somebody else wants to come in with assessment stuff, that's awesome. But I know that Naomi's here and she wanted us to come. I want to go back to Naomi. So unless there's something else, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's do a quick check it. And Miriam, you're shaking her head. No, you're okay.
We can't hear you, Naomi, if you're trying to talk.
No,
we can't.
Okay. Okay. Jenny did have a question. Now I want to scroll back up to Jenny's unless you want to just go right in there. And Jenny, I hit enter. Let's see. Grandparents. That's it. Grandparents, how to navigate parenting their adult children. I saw Greta shaking her head. Because you've got a strong grandparenting class, if I remember, along with caring for their grandchildren. Yeah, Jenny?
Yes.
Can I make one comment about the way you said the question? And I don't know if this is the way they or you are thinking about this, but you said they were talking about parenting their adult children and also parenting their grandchildren whom they might be doing care for during the week. And I myself would be a red flag for me that they're not putting a lot of competence in their children's parenting to call what they're doing with their grandchildren parenting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's more, I was just finding a way to summarize it, but
it's okay.
They were just wanting like, to basically support their adult children in their parenting, by not like giving too many ideas, but just being supportive. You know what I mean? Like that conflict that you have, because it's what their child is doing is different than they parented, especially related to safety things, baby cribs, car seats, all that stuff. So they're trying to be respectful of their adult child, but also they're spending time with their grandchildren and caregiving. So trying to navigate that piece. Yeah. It's really interesting. None of them are, they all are very open to, they're trying to let their adult children lead the way. And there's no one who's like, I can't believe my adult child's doing this. They're more like, so she told me to do this. Okay, I'm going to see how that goes. Even though it's the opposite of what I was told when she was little. So, yeah. But Greta gave me a great resource if you didn't see it. 0 to 3 has a whole grandparenting thing. So I'll take a look at that. Might be some great things in there.
There's a nice lesson that talks about what has been and what is now, and just kind of do some access points to approach some of these topics, have conversation with the grandparents. It does a nice job with that. It also has a tool in there if there's a specific conflict that parents and grandparents are having together, how to kind of the listening of, active listening approaches and how to address a topic that might be very challenging. And it gives even like a little thing that they could work out together. It's obviously a lot more formal than we usually hit on in parent ed. But it was very nice to have that if in case somebody did want it, I guess. And it is a big thing. I mean, we hear about it in regular parent ed, right? The challenge with boundaries when they, especially around holidays, when they're gathering together more, and the concern, the fear, the anxiousness, the anger, the resentment. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it can get really deep and really difficult. And I thought 0 to 3 did a pretty nice job. I didn't do everything they did, but it was a nice resource to pull some stuff from. I think you'll like it, Jenny. And even some cute videos. So it's not, anyway.
Well, thank you. Jenny, it's not about grandparents necessarily, but with my newborn class, I really hit home hard to the moms. Yes, my cat has made an appearance, as always. I really hit it hard to my moms that their partners are not mind readers. Their parents are not mind readers. And so I said, if you're starting to feel resentful because your partner is not changing diapers or your mother-in-law keeps dropping by, you cannot stew in it. You have to communicate. And I say, I understand that some of you communicating is hard. And I understand that some of you have family members who make communication even harder, but find a way. Maybe it's a text, maybe it's a handwritten letter. Because so often you get really combative and you're just like, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm not doing a good job, right? I said, so really try to find a time, not after 10 p.m. I'm like, do not have conversations with anybody after 10 p.m. Nothing good happens after 10 p.m. But really try to find a time to sit and say, I have something I want to share with you. It is not a criticism. It is an observation. Or I have a question about how we can get on the same page about getting angry or, taking deep breaths when our kids are, you know what I mean? So like, just really encouraging grandparents and parents to sit down and talk, because so much stuff gets swept under the rug and it just festers. It just festers. No one's mind readers. But I think if people can just sit and have a conversation, and sometimes a text, and knowing I'm going to send a text, please don't take it the wrong way. You know what I mean? But like, this is kind of what's coming, and it just gets a dialogue going, because it's better than nothing. I just cannot tell you how many resentful new moms I have because their husbands aren't doing what they think they should be doing. And I was like, this is your first baby. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. So that's really, I mean, yes, 1 or 2 partners in 50 will be intuitively really amazing. The other 48 need a little bit of guidance, and that's okay.
It's a good lesson, because when you resent your kids, that's an important thing to notice, and you're the grown-up. So I tell parents that too, like, hey, you're the grown-up in the room. So if there's resentment, it's on you to change the pattern, interrupt stuff, switch it up with, set a boundary, all of it. It's like relationshiping 101, but yeah, Gottman's have a new book out too. That's great. Sweet little coupling book.
Yes. I was just with my son-in-law. They talk about the 4 horsemen over there with his ministry that he does. And he said, they were at a retreat. They said, let's think about a term we can use that's not gender specific. What else could we call them? And they had a really fun activity doing that. So if anybody comes up with something other than horsemen, we could maybe come up, but they had some, like, turn. I hate when I forget things. It was so funny. And if you were all there, you would have been laughing. And now I can't remember what they came up with, but something about horse people, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to sidetrack, but I thought this group would really like it. And then I forgot.
And you'll remember, and it will be okay.
I will, maybe I'll text him and real quick on the side here and say, what were the names of the
Put it on the family yet. Just say, you know, secret to the group. The word was.
Right. I will do that. I will do that. But anyway, sorry. One of the moms in my class, when we were talking about this topic, she said for years she was resentful and became embittered and was very hypercritical. She couldn't even think about specific things without getting enraged. And she talked about how she had to work through breaking the cycle with something. I can't remember what she said exactly, but now they're to the point where she started just sending out little messages, little memes that talked about being respectful of our children and asking permission to get into their space. Or she just send out little things to a variety of people. Maybe it feels a little passive aggressive, but she really worked into a place where she was able to even send articles and say, hey, I'm working on this right now with the kids. I would love it if you knew about it. And I would love it if you could come alongside me in doing this or something, and it was helpful. And she's now able to walk into those spaces without intrepidation and feeling and fear for the whole week ahead of time, right beforehand. So yeah, but Sarah, basic communication skills are not basic communication skills everywhere. I mean, you say that, but I mean, my goodness, we've been through a lot in the last few years that have really shaken us in those ways. And I'm not surprised, I guess, to say that some of this is really helpful 101 stuff. And I love it, actually. It's really good.
I also think there was a Brene Brown episode where she actually, no, it's in her audiobook, which I have uploaded to Drive if anybody wants it. It's only available in audiobook. It's The Gifts of Imperfection in Parenting.
Oh. Yeah.
And I will find that, I'll get that posted to you guys. But she talks about how she had a parent, so an adult parent talking to another adult. So it'd be like my mom, which is comical to think about this, but a parent, she said, I have had people call me and say, or talk to me and say, my 72-year-old mother called me and she said, I'm so sorry. I was trying to parent you with guilt and I did it with shame. So parents are learning, but what I've found is some of my parents are like, my parents are better grandparents to my grandchildren than they were to me. And some parents really have a hard time with that. And so I think some of that is like, obviously it takes that's family therapy stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But I think if you can just have an underlying, and this is what I have said, it's like when we know better, we do better. And I always use the example of women who smoked, pictures of a big pregnant belly and she's sitting there and she's smoking in the 60s, I said, this is what women did in the 60s, but we know better. So we don't do that now, and yeah, I'm a baby of the 80s. There was no car seat. I was just kind of sitting. I was kind of buckled in the back seat, kind of we would never drive down the street now like that. When we know better, we do better. So I say it's really hard not to want to shame our parents for doing the best they could with what they had. And we know better now, so we do better. And so that's just something that I've talked about too with parents who are resentful of their parents because they're just better grandparents. Are you guys seeing that? Yeah. So that's just kind of the little tool I've put in my box to kind of say, try not to hate on your parents. They did the best they could. And frankly, come on, I don't know, Susan, you raised a kid in the 70s and 80s. There were kind of no rules. It was like anything goes, right? I don't know.
And all the rules still existed too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I raised my kid in the 90s. So.
Oh, 90s. Okay.
I did. Yeah. But Mary Kay.
Yeah. Mary Kay did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that there's, as you're saying that, I'm reflecting, like, I remember going home as a college student and my parents had a dog, like we were all out of the house, and the way that they treated that dog, like they're covering up, like they treated that dog like I treat Audrey, right? And I just and saying to my brother, you know, we were never treated like that. You know? So, but yeah, I mean,
yes, like, are they?
Yeah, you know, I mean, when I think of sort of that, you know, Dr. Spock, you know, the very medicalization of parenthood and all of that that was going on too in the 50s and the 60s, right? And then you have on top of that, not just parenting stuff, but what was going on in society, right? In terms of expectations for families and in economies, right? And then the incredible marginalization and, you know, and racism that was going on, and challenges around poverty and immigration and all of that that families were facing, that of course, you know, contribute to their parenting. That it is very humble, and I really appreciate that you are, you know, having supportive, loving conversations with this generation of parents to give them compassion for their own parents.
Mm-hmm. There's also, I'm sorry, there's also the fact that anytime we hear something from someone we love, it has emotion attached to it. And if we hear something differently than we think it should have been, it's never a bad choice to figure out what they might have meant, if they meant to express. So the week before Thanksgiving, I was holding my grandson. This is the 32-pound kid who's a 1. And I wanted to get closer to the ground because he's kind of heavy. So I decided to kneel down on the carpet. And he made a move as I was kneeling down, and all of a sudden I'm on the floor. And my son, who's sitting in the same room with us, goes, "Mom, are you okay?" And I looked at him and I said, "Your baby is here." And he goes, "Mom, my baby has been on top of you the whole time I was facing you. I want to know if you're okay, because your knee hit pretty hard." And I said, "I'm fine." You know, but, you know, and that was accusatory in many ways, what I said. But I was more horrified that, you know, that I had fallen holding Silas than what was happening to me. And Matthew cared about both, but he spoke about the one that he wanted to find out about. So I was glad for the clarification. I could have said it more kindly.
So, I mean, this sharing make me think about a book. There was a book, like, I do not know, in like 70s or 80s, it came out telling parents don't comfort the baby when the baby is crying. And the baby will, like the first time when the baby cry, can continue cry for 4 hours long. And then next time the baby will cry for 2 hours. And then gradually, if you just let the baby cry, the baby usually will not cry. And I know I met a parent, she used that book for parenting. And I think that was in like I was in 1998 or 1999. I mean, it's so clear. Even though I was very young at that time, I saw clearly her son was, you know, kind of, she called her son like immature, right? You know, even as her son was like teenager, still different than other kids. And she didn't even know why. And her son didn't know. I feel like, you know, this, I mean, Ellen says we know better, we know better, we do better. It's really, but sometimes we do, you know, we got this kind of directions. I mean, information, right? So it's not the parents' fault, but the result is painful. I don't know, this boy, like in the future, what will he feel about that?
You know, one thing about that, Yuji, I think I know the program you're talking about. I won't bring it up, but it's a very discipline, not guidance. And when I say discipline, I mean more punishment and related all that, right? It's really strict. But at the end there, when you were sharing about how he will be when he grows up, I was just on with Autism Navigator out of Florida State. If any of you know about that or don't know about that program, it's awesome. They've got a great way. They've got great information on looking for autism checklists and those sorts of things, or whatever resources for all the way down to children. And it's Baby Navigator and Autism. Anyway, I was just on with them, and they ended the program because some of us were talking about, we've been trying to work with families where we see the signs in their children, and they're not getting referred, or they're not getting interventions, and a little bit of concern about that. And one of the things they mentioned is children are always learning. They will always be learning. They will always be learning. So if we don't get them in early intervention, which is obviously we're all proponents of that, they will continue to learn in kindergarten and second grade and 10th grade and 12th grade and 18 and 40. I'll just skip a bunch there, and that gives me hope. I have to pull into some sort of a hope there that, just like you were saying, Ellen, we know better, we do better. And so I think that child will even learn and know better eventually, or will be able to hopefully have the support. And here's the deal. The people I know in my own world that followed that program, they really were trying their best. They did it only because it was their best. I mean, I know a lot of people who would have looked at that and said, I'm not putting that much energy into my parenting. They would have gone, are you nuts? And they did, and they followed it, and they worked really hard. And I think that comes from a heart of wanting to do right by their children, right? And if that model there is, I'm trying my best, I'm really working at doing this, if that's what they're hearing through all of that, I think a child can come up with some resilience because they have a caring individual in their life really trying hard, right? And very interested in their well-being. Might it be skewed? And I'm not justifying abuse. I don't want it to come off that way, but I do want to bring it to what I'm passionate about here at the moment, I guess, is I've come to a place where I have to have hope that the heart of the individual, even if they haven't been doing something well, is going to work. And that if we continue to try to do well, that we can influence that child who's now 18 years old, and that there's going to be the other people in his community, and he's going to belong to something that's going to be hope-filled and growth-filled, right? I don't know. That's, I guess, in response to what you said, UJ, I just feel like that's where I would land my heart, because that's where I have to land my heart. Otherwise, I'm giving up. I can't. I don't know.
Greta, you probably know the book Parenting from the Inside Out. I'm
yes.
Sure. But that's basically about how you fix it, or how you heal attachment issues in adulthood. Mm-hmm. It's really amazing. I mean, it's better not to have attachment issues, but it can be resolved through your work with your own children. Yeah.
And people do what they think is the very best. My first baby was born in 1978. I wanted to nurse him. My mother had not nursed any of her children because that was not the way you did things in the late 50s and early 60s. It wasn't scientific enough. And luckily, the kid was 8'15" at birth, 9 pounds the next time they weighed him, and there was no chance he was going to starve to death. And he was a real star nurser. And I remember the day my grandma came to me and whispered in my ear, nursing didn't hurt your mother any. And I was like, but I just had to say, Mom, I'm sorry you feel that way, and I will take him to the doctor regularly. And if you see other signs other than that he's only nursing, that you are concerned about his health, let's talk about it. But I said, I'm going to nurse him. And I nursed him till he was 2.5, which is pretty long these days, but it was so easy with him. So.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Yep.
Yeah, a plug for that 16 by 16. You guys, this has made conversations about autism so much easier. I do this in my toddler classes when I can. But it's a really great way, because if you look at them, it has the 16 objects, actions with objects, and 16 gestures. Because I found that a lot of kiddos, sometimes you've got that quirky kiddo and you're just waiting for them to not talk, because unless there's something else going on, parents will be like, oh, he's just really smart. And it's like, oh, that's not it. But these 16 gestures are really great because it's social communication, which those kiddos who are on the spectrum, you're not seeing that at 16 months. So it's such a good resource.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got it, I was like, yes, I can talk about autism in toddler classes, because I really didn't know what else to do. So, because sometimes those autistic kids have fabulous vocabularies and you're like, dang it, I can't get this kid in on speech. So.
They have a nice little checklist, like 5 typical things, and then an additional 4 things that if they check, if you have a ratio there. And if you go out to the website, it's really, really helpful. Really, really helpful if you're interested.
Greta, are you talking about your resource or the 16 by 16 resource?
The Autism Navigator.
Autism Navigator. Okay.
Autism Navigator is part of Baby Navigator. Baby Navigator is nestled in it. And those lookbooks that Ellen is bringing you to are great examples of what to be watching for. But they have, I just did it this before coming here, an hour free, and you sit in there with them. And you can do a free 6-week course on Wednesdays from noon to 1, from what they just shared with me, just at the end of the hour there. And it's free and it's really excellent. They have tons of videos that you can watch. And then they ask you, well, what of these in the long version, like 16 under this one and 16 under this one, 16 under, they have this really long, but it was really good training for me as a parent educator. I loved it. And as a screener, I really loved it. It's really helpful. You get pictures of what is, the non-eye contact, those pieces that Ellen was talking about, the social communication pieces. I'd highly recommend it. I was recommended to do it through my special education program. They said, Greta, you would love this. And so I went out about 5 years ago. Very good program out of Florida. Anyway.
I posted the link to the courses.
Thank you.
It's been on my list. It's been on my list to do. I just, it's like Friday. Ooh, should I do some PD? Yay. No,
I know. It's not. Yeah, if anyone's interested, they're going to be starting that 6-week course here. I think it's in January or something. So go out there and look at it. It's free. It's it's quality. Yeah.
Well, great, you guys, this is fabulous. I know a number of you are going to have to run. I just want to do a quick sort of summary statement as I listen to you all and reflect on the, parents are just doing the best they can. And especially if we think about previous generations, is that just reminding you of that point that so few parents have you. Right? So few parents have ECFE, so few parents have incredible parenting educators as supports in their corners, knowledgeable pediatricians, nurses, social workers, whoever, teachers who would say to them, there's also like Autism Navigator and this, there are these visual tools to help you, understand your kids' social emotional things. It's just like the great majority of parents don't have that. And so the fact that kids end up, it's just like they do the best they can with what they have. And without getting into whole lobbying policy thing about how there should be more parenting education in the world, I just so appreciate all of you, for what you do and what incredibly tremendous resources you are for the families that you work with. So thank you all. This has been a great rejuvenating, getting back after the holiday meeting. Thank you all for being here. Abby, it's wonderful to see you again. And we'll see you. And Naomi, get rid of that sickness at the house and everybody stay on the mend. And we'll all see you next week. Yeah?
Can I just give a really quick resource I found this week? Help Me Connect, we've talked about it before, is the local groups on their website, and they sent me there through a link. I'm not exactly sure how to get there, but maybe I can send it next week. They have made a QR code that will bring them directly out now to that site. So it's a narrower brochure type formatted piece. And at the bottom, there's a QR code. So they don't have to remember the website and get out there. So just if you're using Help Me Connect with your families, it's a nice, simple one that they can quickly do with their phone. And I feel like we're on the other side of that bell curve now. More people are using QR code than haven't used it now. And so it really feels like a great way to connect and get them that information on their phone so they have it when they leave or wherever they're going. Anyway, just a click. Sorry about that, but
no, really helpful.
Susan, thank you for your lovely goodbye.
And thank you for your additional resource.
Sorry. All right. Thanks so much.
Okay, everyone, have a fabulous week, and we'll see you next week. Yeah.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye. Stay safe.